Hello everyone, today we are going to talk about a very important issue, how to choose a computer. Welcome to Simply Learn Tech 101. Many times I encounter people that they buy a computer, they bring it home, and then they turn it on, and then they see that the computer is working very slow and they don't understand what happened. They say, hey, I just bought a new computer. So how come the computer is working slow? So first of all, it's important to understand that buying a computer is like buying a car. Every car is for a different purpose. There are sports cars, there are SUVs, pickup trucks. So it very depends the computer that you are going to buy for what you are going to use it. There are different types of computers, and what is important is the hardware that it has in it. If just you're looking for the most cheap computer, probably this computer, when you will bring it home, it will be working very slow for your needs. There are three main components of the computer that you need to check before you buy. The first one, of course, is the CPU, the Central Processing Unit. This is the brain of the computer. It calculates everything in the computer, and it's also multitasking. So the newer the CPU, the faster will be the calculations. Today, for example, there are Intel CPUs that are very good. We are talking about the i9 series. And there are also the AMD, which are great specifically for laptops. The CPU is the one of the three components that is important. You want to make sure that you are buying a computer with the latest CPU. Now today, one of the best CPUs is the Intel i9. But if you are looking at this video in about 4 years, so probably then there are gonna be other CPUs. So you need to check the best CPU for the moment that you are going to buy the computer. The second factor that makes the computer running fast is how much memory the computer has in it. A lot of people, they buy a computer with only 8 gigabytes of RAM, and then they notice that the computer is working slow. Program that you open in your computer consumes the RAM. So if you open Word and you also open the browser, the computer needs memory for all of those programs to run. So if you have only 8 gigabytes of RAM in your computer, probably your computer will be working slow as a turtle. Because you need to remember, when you turn on your computer, if you have only 8 gigabytes of RAM, if you have Windows 11, for example, in your computer, when you're just turning on the computer, the operation system, the Windows operation system, will consume half of your RAM before you even open one program. Today, a decent amount of RAM will be at least 32 gigabytes of RAM. Don't buy less, because your computer will be working slow. Another factor that is very important for the overall speed of the computer is the hard drive. You want to look for a computer that has an SSD drive, solid state drive. It's faster than the older hard drives because it can go to the hard drive and find the information that you need faster than the traditional hard drives. So we have the CPU, the memory, and the hard drive. Now, the size of the hard drive that you're going to buy depends on your activity. If you are a person that downloads a lot of files and maybe movies from the internet, you will probably need a bigger hard drive, because you need to store all of those files that you download in the hard drive. And you don't want the hard drive to become the bottleneck of the performance of your computer. So today, you want to make sure that your computer that you're buying is an SSD drive. If you are a gamer, you will probably want to buy a computer with more than 32 gigabytes of RAM. If you want to buy a computer with less memory in the beginning, because maybe your budget is limited, you want to make sure that you can add later more memory to the computer. Because you can buy a computer with 8 gigabytes of RAM and then later on buy another 32 gigabytes of RAM. But you need to make sure that the computer that you buy, there is space to add more RAM. Many computers today don't allow you to add more memory. So if you buy a computer with only 8 gigabytes of RAM and you don't have space to add more RAM is memory, so you will have the problem to upgrade the hardware of your computer. And then if you want to add more RAM, you'll have to buy a new computer. So you always want to think about upgrades in the future. You need to remember also, if you have a Windows computer, as I said before, the operation system consumes RAM. So when you turn on your computer, a lot of RAM is already allocated to the operation system itself. Another important issue to look at when buying a computer is if you want a laptop or a PC. There are, of course, advantages and disadvantages in each one of them. A PC, it's easier to add hardware to it, and you can do it many times by yourself, looking at tutorials in YouTube. For example, adding memory, RAM, to the computer, you just open it when the computer is turned off and you add memory. Adding memory to a laptop is more complicated because in the laptop, all the hardware is stick together and you need to open much more screws to add memory to the laptop. If you want to add memory to the laptop, probably you will have to take your computer to a computer lab and they will have to do it for you. It's mobile, you can move it everywhere, but adding hardware to a laptop, it's more problematic. And most of the laptops, they have fixed hardware that it's very hard to replace when there is a problem with a specific component. For example, I like to use both. I have a PC and I have also a laptop. A PC is more comfortable. I have a bigger keyboard, I have a bigger screen, and I can add hardware to it as I want to without any issue. So pay attention when buying a computer. It depends on your needs. Don't just go and buy the cheapest computer because it's like going to buy the cheapest car. You need to understand, if you buy the cheapest car, so probably the speed won't be so high, won't have a lot of accessories, and it's the same with computers. If you're going to buy the cheapest computer, if it's a PC or a laptop, you need to remember that there are consequences. So again, you want to check that it's an SSD drive, that it has at least 32 gigabytes of RAM, and also has a decent CPU. I'm not talking specifically about which CPU right now and the size of the hard drive because this changes all the time, like different models of cars. It depends on your needs. You need more hardware when you know that you are going to do specific tasks. If you're just going to use the computer to browse the internet and maybe once in a while open Excel, you don't need a lot of memory. But if you are a heavy user, you're using graphics, you are a user that likes to open different programs, work on the computer while you're listening to music on the computer, and you don't want the computer to suddenly freeze completely, you will need more hardware. If you're just a basic user, probably a computer with 16 gigabytes of RAM will be enough for you. But it always depends what you are going to use the computer for. I hope this video was very helpful for you. If you have some comments or you want me to create videos on specific issues related to IT and technology, please let me know. Thank you for watching.